So thank you for all coming to this reading. You may know Chax Press does these readings either live or in Zoom on an irregular basis, but I'm really happy today to welcome Joseph and Hank to this reading. Hank Lazer has been for a long time in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where he has been poet, scholar, university administrator. As much as anyone I know, he has worked to perceive and communicate relations between innovative practices in poetry and poetics over 3 centuries. And I think that is just such a useful um, gift to all of us. And I think you will also find in his own work that such a practice of not recognizing um, barriers and differences so much, but connections, leads him to a poetry that has no walls and that works not in a singular way, but in multiple ways, recognizing that the poem declares its own rules as it goes. And of course, sometimes his ways, as you may know, involve not only poems that look like poems on the page, but poems that look like shapes on the page and that employ colors on the page. And I think we'll witness some of that today too. Joseph Lease is a poet who, over the course of his last several books, including one that Chax Press published um, like a year and a half ago, Fire Season, and another one that I've been seeing take shape over the last year and a half or so. He has a way of registering something on the field of the page, the field of the poem, which looks like it would be um, just a direct voice, and it is, but it's a voice that relates both to objectivist poetics and romantic poetics at the same time. It partakes of kind of a wide range of how we might think about poetry, and it also never loses this ability to feel like it is both coming from his soul directly to yours. And I think that too is an amazing gift in contemporary poetry. So I am going to stop introductions now and just say, please welcome Joseph Lees.
Woohoo! Hi, hi. I love all these floating hands and hearts and stuff. Hi, everyone. Charles, thank you so much. And Hank, thank you so much. Uh, Charles, it's such a joy. I'm so grateful and proud to be part of Chax Press, my favorite press. And just so happy to be here today. And also, of course, so happy to celebrate Hank's new and selected poems. An amazing book, a great book. Um, and I see so many friends, or at least their names, uh, and I'm and so many others who I also admire. So, and I'm just very glad to be reading. So I will, without further ado, I'll just start. Um, I'm going to start by reading, let's see, okay, 112 is the time. I'm going to start by reading two poems from my book, The Body Ghost, which came out in 2018. And then I will move to Fire Season, and then I will move to my new poems. But we'll start with The Body Ghost. I'm going to start with the poem Rent is Theft. Do people want to see the poem? I think you do. I
Okay.
think maybe you do. Hold on. Let's see what I can do. No, not that. All right, this will work. Um, as I said, I'm going to start with the poem Rent is Theft. It'll just take me a second to get there. There we go. So, rent is theft. Oh, you can't see it? Really? You don't see the title page?
No.
No.
Oh, well, I suppose I won't worry about it then. Okay. Rent is theft. Rent is theft. This sky is your sky. This sky is my sky. Dear God, let there be gas. Let there be cash and soft voices. Rent is theft. Hide me among the graves, the city, the wind, the banks. You just want to die. I mean, capitalism just wants to kill you. I mean, you just want and you just want. Rent is theft. We made this sky of drones to eat your voice. The sky is money. Privatize the sky. Your ocean dies, and Google buys the sun inside your name. Rent is theft. They had a body crammed in a mailbox, and it was just a blue suit with bones sticking out. Rent is theft. You didn't. You did. Just keep shopping. Eyes was eye, dawn breaking, earth breathing. Just say missiles. Just say drones. Frack, baby, frack. My eyes are made of cash and going broke. Rent is theft. We never drove the blue car through the stars. We always drove the blue car through the stars. We never guessed the dream we never guessed. We always guessed the dream we always guessed. Today we fight like gods. Today we fight for gods. How much is that ahi in the window? Here you are, here we are. No mercy, no future. Lots and lots of turkey sausage. Death tangles, death shakes. Death breakfast served all night. Death tangles, death shakes. Death flavored ice cream. Death berry gum. Rent is theft. So run around like daydreams, tear up maps. Democracy is anybody's eyes. Feel like you might have killed someone. Rent is theft. You didn't, you did. Just keep shopping and promise me the rich can't sleep. And promise me the rich can't sleep. Rent is theft. Please, please, please be ironic. We left our freedom in American mouths. We broke our freedom in American words. You run around like daydreams, tear up maps. Democracy is anybody's eyes. Rent is theft. We left our freedom in American mouths. We broke our freedom in American words. Tell me, will I spark in this light, expensive light? Did you pray? Did you beg for days like these? Rent is theft. Wake up. You're not the truth. And I might have killed someone. You didn't. You did. Eyes was I. Rent is theft. Just keep shopping. I could have been 100 years of war. I could have been 100 years of peace. Frack, baby, frack. My eyes are made of cash and going broke. Um, and then I'm also going to read a poem for my father. For my father, yeah, for my poem for my father. Um, the body ghost. Someone scatters someone's body. Ashes, ashes, let's fall down. Just some hours and just some clown. Now you eat your spider web. Now you dance inside your bed. Go and go and go ahead. And may the wind that killed you slide you home. Um, and now I'm going to read some poems from Fire Season. And so I'll start with the poem Falling, which is for my mother. The whole book is for my mother, I should say, but Falling is particularly addressed to her. And my mother died in 2018 which was the same year that, as many of you know, the IPCC released its most urgent report. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released its most urgent report and really sort of declaring, I mean, if you're paying attention, declaring game over. Um, so 2018, so those two things came together for me. They were together. They didn't come together. They just were together. And I wanted to talk to my mother about how much she taught me about animals and the earth and, the rain and um, and also how much I feel that we both, especially me, but we both failed in our responsibilities you know, to animals and the earth and the rain. Falling. So yes, I want to tell your story. I have to make it up. You tried to be joy. Did you tell me your story? We forgot to see. That's part of it. You said cream light, cream thick purple clouds, the end of the world, maybe. Fire clouds, we killed the animals, fire clouds, extinction. Once, when some child could draw your voice, my mother turns to paper, dying on the kitchen floor. Mom, the animals are dead, are dying. Mom, did I try? My mother's face is gone, so what is real? Maybe sunlight, my mother's face. We touch the gone voice, bent in half, and Mom is green and she is dead, and she is where, oh where? She was the search for God, for love, the summer wind, the starry night. And the next one is called Everything Merges with the Night. That's from Eno, in case anyone was wondering. Where have I heard that? It's from Eno, Brian Eno. Everything merges with the night. It's a dream of the end, the mountain, the sun, but the world is burning. I don't care what I know. I feel so sick. The Puritan diaries, American self. Maybe I'm a liar, half joke, half damage. Rain pouring down, the big branches move, the secrets in the gutters, the dream death, the corpse gives commands. We stay inside our city, cold night. A picture of a thought, a garden, skyscrapers, empty tombs, soul of bullets, I was exploding. Everything's corpse light. My mother won't speak. I tried to be joy. Walking home, cold night, red frozen sky. Spin the night. Will we kill the world? The sky is fire. Shed your skin. Did we kill the world? Will we kill the world? Look, green water. And there's also a poem for my father in this book. It's called Riding Death. And it's partly written in and it's set in the last few weeks and days of his life, riding death. He was wild, a little wild. He's dying. You can't exhale. He's dying. He's asking why you love him. Riding death. Kisses that we share across the sky. He is the drunk lane, the mayor, drunk lake, drunk in the lake. He's so tired and he can't what? My father just feels Sidney Bechet, Hart Crane, crazy cat. Now he doesn't have any. He gives life, kisses that we share across the sky. Riding death, the book will save the book, oil will kill the world. He's just trying to see, pay attention. He said joy, he said feel this. Blue, green voice. He said violet, blue wind, pushes river light birches, riding death. He's dying in a town full of rabbits. He's dying lying on the couch, riding death. He hates sentimental slop. Hold his hand. He's from Coney Island. He's tougher than you. He says, when I squeeze your hand, I'm squeezing her hand. His mother in the room. His mother's me. Tell him, your mother loves you. Riding death, branches, paradise. Are you blue? Are you green? Are you fire? Are you gold? Have you come? Have you come to sing to me? To sing to me, riding death. Drunk like coins, like coins. Our lifestyle is wrecking the planet for Christ's sake. She's drunk like a gold coin. He's drunk like a gold coin. The TV says, the TV. Farmers are farmers. Corporations eat them. Rabbits are perfect. Riding death. Ice in the river. Blue night comes. No, no one. Nobody dies. Nobody loses. Riding death. Where is the distance? Where are the gym shoes? Where are the toenails? Where is the pain? Where are the toenails? Please stop this screaming. Please breathe my news flash. My eyes don't fit. Riding death. Joy could, blue fire, torn blue, you, dear one, dear smart shining you, dear you, my father's what, my father's rain becoming rain, riding death. Soft wind like a road, done. I wrote done. I tried to write don't, don't, don't. And the next poem from uh, hi Todd. The next poem from I can't see what's going on over there, but I think it's nice. Hi Nick. Um, so the next poem that I'm going to read uh, from Fire Season also has a prog rock title. Um, you'll recognize it, of course. It's Bowie. It's Cracked Actor. The poem is Cracked Actor. I steal. I'm okay with it. Cracked actor. The soul was a spy, the soul was a forest, the soul was a shipwreck, the soul was a mouth. Does God love me? The new warning is fire in your face, system collapse. I thought I had a future. I want joy. I taste poison. I am the ghost of I, etc. I was a fool. I had a plan, and water was my dirty name. I'm writing inside death. I'm in the room. In the sweet exhale of July, where dead zones pock the mind, just west of the end of the world, where the local lost boy nailed dogs to the walls of his shack, where the headless ghost dogs run through the waste, and walls of flame and walls of flame. You spin the spin, you go insane, you eat the light, you eat the pain. Fire tsunami, birds on fire. Just breathe night forever. Just say, drop your eyes right here. Quick, learn to die. The animals are dead, are dying. Mom, you read the books to me, and I tried. My legs are trembling. My hands are trembling. Believe me, don't believe me. I don't care. I was the future, says the nothing man. I was the future for a day or two. And now I will close by reading a group of poems from um, my new manuscript called Now What, which is, I'm very, 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 very grateful to say, forthcoming with Chax Press. The story. Sheep in charred tangles, rivers boil, eyes boil. My name is I Want It. Soul of bullets, soul of cash, the blue whales go silent. Eyes boil, rivers boil. The sky is fire, shed your skin. Sheep in charred tangles. I'm dancing, I'm breathing, I'm praying, I'm nothing. And this book has, instead of prog rock, it's got Victorian poetry. So this is the title's from Hopkins, Send My Roots Rain. Presence was broken for a while. Stillness was floating in plaid dark like a promise to the living and the dead. And the most horrible heartburn, and the old couple in the kitchen, lights out, waiting for sound. And the leaves roll just like faces, and the faces blow like thieves. And we all keep our explosions, and you taste joy in the night. And the lost boys answer slowly, and the corpse picks up the phone. And we all claim that we're holy. God won't leave our dreams alone. The game. You tried to be joy. We tried to live. I forgot we are the collapse. Riding the trains all night, I was your hair, your air, your arms, your secret, sacred smile. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what I was. I didn't know the trees were burning. Do you believe me? My life, so what? The world is state terror. We killed the animals. Greed is good. Greed is now. Greed is holy. You know how. We shoot cows in the head. You can be anything you put your mind to. May you have a big, beautiful life. In the coffin, the boy is dreaming. Spruce light, my money, my body, my oil. I am the small burst of cash, the ash, the fire. What is necessary? Can you slide inside some wind? Can you slide the sun back home? Can you pray inside your play, fray inside your day? You want to kiss electric rain. It's hard to think of anyone but you. Hey, shadows, playing shadows. Say the names. I'll try to flow like hair, like gold, like wind. I'll try to glint like birds behind the rain. The buried life, and that's, of course, Matthew Arnold. The buried life. The sky is fire, 1.25 billion dead animals, trees exploding, shed your skin, tell your child, roll your eyes, shed your skin. I don't care what I know. The wind-washed air, roses, bones, bones and dirt, and we're waiting to die and we're waiting to pray. God the rabbit afraid, God the cat dying. Bless anyone, bless anyone. Redwoods on fire, horses on fire. God, are not our days few? And the last poem that I'll read this afternoon is called The End. We were games, we were lies. The waters boil with trash and color. We were games, we are dead, we're all dead. So yes, joy. But the world is burning. I don't care what I know. I feel so sick. The sky is fire. Shed your skin. I'm trying to say fire. Look here, we're burning. Rose gray cloud stretches. I feel so sick. Systems collapsing, cascading. We were games. We were lies. Look here, we're burning. Thanks, everyone, and good luck.
Thank you, Joseph. I just want to interject. I've had the pleasure of hearing poems by Joseph on an every week or 2 or 3 weeks over the last couple of years as we've worked on future project and just shared each other's work. And he's also an amazing listener. But should you have or should you uh, find your way to have any of his books, please don't just read the book and say, I've read the book. Read the book again and read a part of it again and read another part of it again and then read the book again because it's always um, giving more all the time. Okay, but I'll stop there. And of course, if you have questions, anytime you want to enter them in chat, I'll try to look back at them after Hank has read. But right now, I want to say welcome, Hank Lazer. Also a pleasure, always.
Thank you, Charles. Wow, Joseph, what a beautiful reading. What great poems. In 2020, Joseph and I read together at Moe's in person the week before COVID hit. And so that was, it's great to be able to read together again if via Zoom. And like Charles, since that time, Joseph and I get together about every week or so and read back and forth. And so the book that I'll be reading from, Abundant Life, New and Selected Poems, which Charles has published with Chax Press, a press that I've been having the pleasure of knowing and being a part of for many, many years, for probably 30 years. And I'm very grateful for the publication of this book. It's part of a double celebration, kind of a life accomplishment. It's a big book. It's 400 pages. It's selections from 14 books from the book days to the present, including some new poems. And it's published also from Lavender Ink, my collection of essays called What Were You Thinking? And it's essays from 2006 to 2024, and it's 600 pages of collected essays, which surprises me because I hate writing essays, and so I was stunned to see there they are. But I would call your attention to the last essay, which is a long meditation on Joseph's book Fire Season, kind of under the revising Heidegger's question, what are poets for, to ask more about what are poems for. And so maybe that's part of the question underneath today's reading, and an implicit celebration of Chax Press and our question of, in this time of peril in many ways, what are books for? And the changing value and relationship to the books, those of us who teach, still teach a little bit with younger folks, it's a different relationship to books than what we grew up with. So think of that as kind of lurking in the background. But my deepest thanks to Charles and to Joseph. I think of Joseph, I think gratefully, as the editor for Abundant Life, as we went back and forth looking at poems, reading poems back and forth, and trying to go from spring training to a roster that was workable. So what I'm going to do is, at a certain moment, I'm going to be able to share screen and show you a little bit of the shape writing varieties and link into one of the musical collaborations I've been lucky enough to do. I'm going to kind of go through giving you an idea of a range of the poetries present here, beginning with selections from days, which are in a 10-line lyrical form. 3. And then again, back in it, witness serendipitous atoms drip and cripple, the imperceptible ache of it. Jack, she took her life. A parent's love called a darkening of the heart. Emily to Susan, avalanche or avenue. 13. So masculine to cackle, go, dumb, born, book, granite, blocks, glottal, stops, and then went eddying forth in ways one had done previously. Vedic beauty, well, after spiritual was ever tenable, effloresce and clot back, the caption, or the azure elsewhere. 84. Slow to slogan, voracious to veracity, amen to mendacity, flesh to pleasure, legs to legendary, costly to apostle, mesh to measure, and I wake up next to you. Jumping ahead to the book The New Spirit, published in 2005, read one of the shorter sections. It's a 10-poem cycle, somewhat drawing on composition of Coltrane's A Love Supreme, learning from that great work. Poems 1, 4, 7, and 10 are much longer. I'll read a shorter one, the third one. You could tune it some other way, apparent to rhythmic conviction, insistent as you have it as it manifests itself. Filtered breeze, crisp circle, these sudden elements sent as breath, said silently or as actually spoken. What can be heard, what can be now attended to, hear this, the exact metaphysics of your historical moment of listening. What does not change is the will or disposition to listen. What does change is the will or disposition to listen. What does change is which rhythms, which combinations of sounds, what music one in his or her time is inclined to listen to, perhaps close listening, but more exactly beckoned listening, audition, summoned from the crisscross of your historical circumstance. To logopeia, please. Stop sermon, cross-cut, bright elements, fiery filaments shine, Vishnu, Lishma, Corazon, bright strive, honk, talk, tongues unclench, to eloquent extension, a pirouette, a parachute for you, a piece of parchment, an arrowhead, a tool for breaking up compelled incorporation, to speak of something else, enabled by shaping, breath to turn. So as you see, if you look into this book or read some of the little end notes and all, what I tend to do is work in invented forms and work with a particular invented form for a period of time until it feels repetitive, and then I stop. I try to come up with something else. So the next I'm going to read from Portions from 2009, read a few poems there. The invented form is a 54-word form, 3 words per line, 3 lines per stanza, 6 stanzas, 54 words, playing on the mystical Jewish number 18. The Hebrew letters that are 18 also spell the word chai, or life. And so here are 3 short poems from Portions. The first is called First, and when I started as an undergraduate in the 60s, late 60s, I was a math major, and after that a pre-med major for a little while, and of course became an English major and a poet, which is a very expected trajectory perhaps. I was taking an early American literature class from Al Jelpy, and he told us we had to go to a poetry reading. And this would have been fall of 1968, and I'd never been to poetry reading. And the reading happened to be it's Robert Duncan and Denise Levertov. And that was a nice way to awaken to poetry. He is bruised. We hold them dear as ornament, given over to a music others manage to ignore. He is bruised, loyal to an invisible, almost comic, dare we say, order, compelled then, we may say, ordered light foot strides, first memorable instance of magic, chanting, bidding to abide with, to be among. Avant, with some immediate echoes of my Grandma Fanya's Yiddish and Russian pronunciations. Avant, I want, and if you, I am becoming my father's dying body. Okra, tomatoes, sweet corn, sunflower. To my son, our neighbor says, you look just like your father. Beans, field peas, new potatoes, today's purchase, or to gain purchase. Terror of bare relation just now. Being here, it of course slips away. Shem. Again and again. Sit at night beside the dark window, a flash of lightning close by, then steady drizzle. I have been given to sit beside, off to the side, hidden, especially hidden from others, hidden but fully aware, dazzling glint, momentary blade, fact is. Good name, the good name of I think it. Let's see. So we'll go through several poems from various stages of shape writing. This is the first of the books, N18, that Singing Horse Press published. So you can look at it that way, but again, bear in mind, I'll try to hold the book as I read it a little bit, but to read this book, to read the shape writing, of course, involves a different physical activity and different pace of reading. The shape writing, all of it is written without drafts, typically abstract shapes, not concrete poetry so much at all. And it's similar to acts of calligraphy or improvisational free jazz. But here's an early one. We will speak to each other, reporting what we think. Story of our wandering as written in the books, speaking to each other, listening so as to arrive at a few sustaining questions. These the simple furnishings in the house of the voice. And a very tiny non-shape writing interlude from the next book called Poems Hidden in Plain View. To feel and to attend to intervals of consciousness measured by breath. There we go. From a later book of shape writing, in which I finally discovered after 27 notebooks what ink to use and what sort of pens to use. It's a book called Evidence of Being Here, beginning in Havana. So I've had the opportunity 3 or 4 trips to spend time in Cuba, and so many of the poems in this book are written there. And again, you'll see in a lot of the shape writing, or much of my writing throughout writing since the 70s, I'll incorporate quotations from reading. And the quotations are not intended as explanations, but just to acknowledge the simultaneity of writing and reading practice. So the reading I was doing in Cuba at the time, I was reading through a good bit of Levinas' work. Where or when will consciousness ever be at home, it is not consciousness who touches or who palpates. It is the hand, and the hand is, as Kant says, man's outer brain. Where or when will consciousness ever be at home? Over time, the shape writing becomes a much more elaborate thing, involving invented writing, involving Chinese characters, involving more and more varieties of colors of ink. And as that proliferates, as the shape writing becomes this more complicated or dense field, it also bears a lot of resemblance to John Cage's musical notations, or especially to Anthony Braxton's works. I had the opportunity to meet Anthony when he was here for a week in residence, and we were able to talk about that. And so I've worked with a lot of different musicians over time, and these become musical scores for improvisation. And the same is true about how they can be read. Same is true about involving multiple voices in the reading. So oftentimes the shape writing presents itself as a question. How would you like to sound this out? What would you like to do with what you see here? So I'll play with this one with you for a little bit and show you some other samples before I move on. Take off in any direction, after all. Can you tell me what you will be thinking 5 minutes from now? Consensual reality. Taking off in any direction, after all. Consciousness and its objects, reassuring us that we are here. Thus, know that a true expression is not done by sound or form, and a true teaching has no particular shape. Taking off in any direction, after all. And what is that threshold where matter that has already been in being happens to experience consciousness, consensual reality? Well, something odd happened. I'd published several books of the shape writing, and this particular book, Slowly Becoming Awake, which is the full 30-second notebook that I'd been working in, Dos Madres Press, Robert Murphy was generous enough to publish this and to stick with some of the 6-color formatting, a really large, beautiful book. And he sent me an email saying, would you mind doing transcriptions for these poems? And my first thought was, hell no. The whole reason, a major reason for doing shape writing is to alter our way of reading in a relationship to the page. Why would I want to do that? But I was in a hurry. I needed to leave town. I was flying out to Berkeley as part of my Zen practice. I was learning to sew the rakusu, and I didn't know how to thread a needle, so I had found a good sewing teacher at the Berkeley Zen Center to help me. And so I got on the plane without answering Robert. And after 2 days of rather intricate and nerve-wracking stitching and beginning to learn what took me 2 trips and probably 15 days of sewing, I thought after a couple days of sewing, I thought, well, why the hell not? Well, it might be interesting to do a transcription. And kind of in the mode of David Anton's transcriptions of his talk poems from tape to words on the page, I thought, you know, maybe the transcription becomes another performance of the piece, another performance of the shape writing. And so I really cherish Robert's invitation for me to do that. It took me about 3 months to transcribe not that many pages. I'll show you another one. The poems, they vary in complexity and simplicity. This particular one is a real favorite and has been performed by a full choir even. This one is totally amenable to being done essentially as a blues composition. A golden dog, a black dog, and one I can't describe came by shortly after dawn, came by the house, a black dog, a golden dog, and one I can't describe, came by shortly after dawn, came by the house curious, sniffed around, a golden dog, a black dog, and one I can't describe, came by shortly after dawn, came by the house, curious, sniffed around, ran down the hillside, crossed the gravel road, and disappeared. There are also those who understand without teachers. And throughout Slowly Becoming Awake, the quoted material comes from Dogen's Shobogenzo, Treasury of the True Dharma Eye. Wonderfully poetic writing of the early 1200s. Again, this one just will give you an idea of the way in which the shape writing really does serve as an invitation for a reader to compose the text by sounding it out, or really having fun, get 4 or 5 people that sound it out, figure out how it might go. And there you're seeing the full 6 colors and the Chinese characters. One of my teachers is the great calligrapher Zen master Kazuaki Tanahashi, who's the translator for Dogen's Shobogenzo. And after he was looking at some of the shape writing of my Chinese characters, he asked me very gently, and what do you do if you make a mistake? And so I leave it. So he showed me some of the mistakes I was making, because I essentially was drawing the Chinese characters. So I'm grateful to Kaz for helping me do better. What happens to all our books with their meticulous notes and markings? We had assumed that someone would care. The words we have touched are no more immortal than we are. Will everything disappear, just as nothing disappears? Your body is not you, your life is transported, moving in time without stopping, even for a moment. The pure mind does not stay. It comes and goes in fragments. Even if there is truth, it does not stay within the boundary of yourself. Will everything disappear? What happens to all our books? We had assumed that someone would care, with their meticulous notes and markings, just as nothing disappears. I thought with the shape writing that I had landed on a way I could write. The shape writing in part came about after the book portions. I had spent 6.5 years working exclusively with that 54-word invented form. And at that time, by the end of 6.5 or 7 years, I was really sick of fixed form. And I determined that whatever I was going to do next, the principle, kind of similar to something I saw in a lot of Charles Bernstein's books, was a principle of difference. So that sometimes in Charles's book, one poem to the next is a principle of difference. I decided that whatever form I would use would be malleable, so that each page would differ from the prior page. And I thought that shape writing had become something that was malleable and pleasant enough and engaging enough to carry me through. And I then saw that that wasn't the case, really. That I began to wonder, maybe the shape writing, as in many forms we occupy, was a way to distract myself so that I could write some things that I might not have been able to write otherwise. And so I kind of began deconstructing shape-written pieces to see what was there if they returned to what I called poems that looked just like poems. And so I had the opportunity to, Christophe Lamiot, he knows, who edited 2 series in France, asked me for a book, and I thought, he'd published one before in bilingual in French and English. I thought, well, let's see what happens. And so that became the book, Poems That Look Just Like Poems. I'll read a poem called Radiant Gist. The conventional sentiments will do just fine, but I must say that before his brain decayed, before faces and names went separate ways, before he could not care for himself, he found the radiant gist of language founded in the ancient Hebrew and Aramaic, in the taken apart and studied syllables of one particular story which became his story, and in a few of the lesser known names for the divine, and for a while he studied and lived and breathed in that holy place, in the slow, hard, earned joy of the study of Torah, and he spoke and he wrote of the joy of living for moments in that profoundly historical, radiant language where he and those prior peoples could dwell in close proximity to something quite beyond us, something that had visited him too through the radiant word. So still in the COVID time, when we were pretty much isolated from one another, I began having a chance to work with a really great musician here, Holland Hobson, who I'd known mainly as an electronic experimental musician, but I went to a brewery in town one evening and he was playing on the banjo, playing traditional Appalachian music. And eventually we got together in the book that I had written, Field Guide, became a source for our collaborating and for working with playing of the banjo. So I'll do a quick read through the poem itself, and then we'll just listen to a collaboration, a video and music collaboration for this particular poem, and you'll see what happens once the banjo enters in. So the trees speak to one another underground and through the air, and I sit at daylight, after walking the dogs up and back down the hillside. Light streams in through eastern-facing curtains, and I arise. Mountains walk, and the Sanskrit word adimukti reaches me. Last night in the warm darkness, sitting beneath a dome of stars. At the very moment of sitting, what is sitting? Is it an acrobat's graceful somersault, or the rapid darting of a fish? Let's see if we can do this. Yes. So the trees speak to one another, underground and through the air. Underground and through the air. And I sit at daylight after walking the dogs up and back down the hillside. So the trees speak to one another, underground and through the air. Light streams in through eastern-facing curtains, and I arise. Underground and through the air. Light streams in, and I arise. Mountains walk. And the Sanskrit word adimukti reaches me last night in the warm darkness, sitting beneath a dome of stars. Sitting, what is sitting? Is it an acrobat's graceful somersault, or the rapid darting of a fish? underground and through the air. Mountains walk. Beneath a dome of stars. At the very moment of sitting, what is sitting? Is it an acrobat's graceful somersault? Or the rapid darting of a fish? Well, thank you for listening to that. If that interests you, if you go to my website, hanklazer.com, there are 15 tracks that we did. We had limited access to the Recital Hall School of Music, and so we were able to record 15 tracks in a total of 17 takes. Only 2 of the tracks ever even had a second take. So it's been great. And he and I have done a lot of stuff. We did New Orleans Poetry Festival concert there and other things. It's just a really wonderful morphing relationship given the range of musics he can do. So there's more there. I'll conclude with a poem for Joseph from Field Recordings of Mind in Mourning, which again pays homage to Alan Lomax and his tour through the Deep South recording blues musicians and gospel music. And this is just such an inconceivable and improbable life. I grew up in San Jose. I've lived 48 years in Alabama, in Tuscaloosa. A little over 10 years ago, from Uncle Cooter and my father-in-law, Dab, we inherited a little over 200-acre farm an hour away. None of this makes much sense. So I do a lot of writing and have a farmer who we lease the land to, who has some cows and takes care of a good bit of the property. And for me, my field recordings are these moments of reading, writing, consciousness, and the making of poems. Sometimes people ask me, well, what do you grow there? I said, poems and photographs and meditation. Here we go. And this one's dedicated to Joseph. The hidden gem is the light of morning, the hay baler's row of yellow discs beside the giant cedar tree, wild hibiscus thriving beside the illuminated farmhouse, gem hidden in the dreams of the sleeping woman, a place for Shekinah to hide, gem hidden with 3 brown dogs at rest after running the dew-covered hillside at dawn, hidden in the intricate nerves, ligaments, and muscles of this illuminated hand as its writing opens up into the light. And I'll finish with a poem for Charles that's in most recent book with a somewhat ominous title, As We Vanish from Public View. At age 75, I'm catching on to that fact. It begins with a line from a poem of Charles's. Somewhere head, perhaps, within gray day, without dawn, dry golden hillside above the pasture, mind, imposture, and a quiet being. Isn't it all ontological? What to study when not knowing is most intimate? And this his last words. Head, perhaps, a rest within a mystery called time, and you are always somewhere. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Hank, thank you. Um, Thank you, everyone. This makes me, I mean, I know we decided early on this would be like about 50 minutes or so of actually poetry reading. So this is one makes me want an hour and a half or more, or 2 hours of actual poetry reading.
I'll be
Um,
careful what you ask for.
I have given people the opportunity to unmute themselves, and if you want to, and certainly we'll go to questions in a few minutes, but I was asked by the poets to maybe be a kind of interlocutor here. And I wanted to ask a question, which is an impossible question, maybe more of a conversation starter or conversation middle. And it goes to something I heard 3 or 4 nights ago when here in Tucson, the poet Anselm Berrigan gave a talk about influence and what that has meant to him, and very much in the sense against the anxiety of influence and more of influence as a pleasure, and also influence as being somewhat accidental. And I've heard Hank mention, many poets and also Zen Buddhism and also John Coltrane, John Cage, and Anthony Braxton, and the musician you work with on the banjo. I've worked enough with Joseph to know something about his context of poetry, our sharing of influences of Robert Duncan and Robert Creeley, and certainly many poets, but also his um, being taken by certain paintings. And even if you know his book Fire Season and the painting by Franz Marc on the cover of that book, Joseph's interest in modernist painting, and even that particular painting, which is a kind of attack, if you will, upon everything. And of course, our world is under attack right now. Um, so I just wonder if you could talk about each of you about influence in a specific and or general way, and just see where you want to take that.
Go ahead, Joseph.
Oh, I was hoping you might want to go ahead. Um, oh, there are so many, 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 many things, and poets and guitar players and painters and horn players, uh, philosophers. Um, I'll just mention a couple of things. David Shapiro was my mentor. And of course, I talk about Bob Creeley's influence on my work often, and I want to, and I will, and I should. But today I'm going to talk about David's. Um, David, for those of you who don't know, David passed away last year. He was a great poet, and really just like a kind of a mysteriously illuminated mind, like a magically illuminated mind. It was like to use a word like learning or scholarship or it makes it sound like it's so far from what it actually was. It was this joyous musicality of the joy of influence and this sort of braiding together and weaving together of different ideas, different traditions, different media. David taught me the word maximalism in the particular usage, in a particular um, meaning, really. And what he meant, I think, because it certainly changed me forever. So I just carry this version of maximalism with me, but I think of it as his. What he meant was not like, okay, minimalism is, really compressed, distilled, sort of opera looking, poem, then maximalism is, Whitman-esque. And that was not what he meant. I mean, that could be part of it in a moment, but maximalism to David Shapiro meant a kind of musical interplay between theories that others would have regarded as mutually exclusive. So a kind of suspension of dumbness or suspension of binarism, if you want. Um, and that way of thinking and that way of including and that way of paying attention. David said every lecture should end with the words of Fairfield Porter, pay attention. Pay attention to absolute reality.
Joseph, that to me goes to what I was saying about Hank making connections across the centuries of things that you wouldn't think to put together. But
Right.
also, I just wanted to say I'm delighted because 2 nights ago I had this conversation out in a bar with Ansel Berrigan, and we talked about David Shapiro. And
Yeah.
I told him about when David had been here and seen a hummingbird, and he'd never seen a hummingbird before, he said, and that he in the wild, and then the hummingbird came back, and David said, I saw 7 hummingbirds, and I didn't have the heart to tell him it was all one hummingbird that kept returning. But Anselm beautifully said, but David's mind is a hummingbird. It is going from this to that so beautifully and making these connections, and which is to me relates to what you just said about him.
Yeah, absolutely. So he was a big influence on me, and he included in that influence was an influence on the way that I experience influence itself. So I'll just, like this sort of meta, not just meta thinking, though it is, but meta feeling, you know,
Mm.
the fullest possible representation or the fullest possible embodiment or enactment of emotion and multiplicity of emotions. So yes, David Shapiro, great poet. Everyone read him. Okay, thus endeth the lecture.
Well, enroll me, please, in the School of Maximalism. The, the range of influences and things that matter to me are just so many in number. Visual arts, music, especially jazz, but also blues, also gamelan music, also Lou Harrison's music, just Coltrane and Monk were people I studied for a long, long time. The book Days came very much out of my listening to Thelonious Monk and trying to work in language with the sudden and humorous turns and direction in his piano solos, uh, on and on and on. So I think for poets, sometimes the schooling that poets experience, in my opinion, is just simply too narrow. That it's open up. Philosophy's been very important to me, but read in an utterly amateurish, oftentimes non-comprehending sort of way, which doesn't bother me. I really don't. That's another peculiarity. I don't mind reading things I don't understand very well, and it's sort of like, you know, what I imagine scuba diving to be like in kelp. That periodically it opens up, and like my reading of Emerson, then suddenly there's a great sentence. You think, okay, I'll plow on, and then move on some more. The book Abundant Life is dedicated to David Anton, Robert Creeley, Larry Eigner, and Lynn Heginian, still alive, read, and listened to. And the poets you read and love, the books you buy and read, you're keeping people in poetry alive in that way. David Anton came and stayed with us when my son was very young, and I learned a lot from David, a great deal. Creeley, somebody, probably the most continuous influence in my writing. And I continue to read Greeley, but also Larry Eigner. I was privileged, the first time I read in Berkeley at Cody's, Jack Foley, who just passed away, brought Larry to my reading, and I got to spend time with Larry on a couple of occasions. Always, it's a weird category. You'll find certain poets that you read that bring you to write, and reading Larry brings me to write. And even though the writing is not necessarily like his, there's something about the beautiful clarity of perception and movement in his writing. Lynn Haginian spent a semester in residence here, and we've been friends for a good while. Alas, she too has passed. Right now, I'm reading a lot of Fannie Howe again. Fannie was somebody I got to know and admired her work greatly. But boy, the range. Oppen was tremendously important to me early on. I didn't have a chance to meet him, but the reading of his work made me see the availability of a kind of depth of thinking that was accessible in poetry as well. And that quest for clarity and the quest to eliminate unnecessary words in the poem, a lot from the reading, but it just continues on and on beautifully. Learning from Joseph and Charles in our conversations and reading their work. I'm just grateful to have many teachers.
I would also say from some of the people you've mentioned, certainly Creeley, certainly Duncan, certainly David Shapiro. We talk about them, and then we've talked about a couple of previous generations, but it goes way back farther than that. I mean, I've had conversations with these people about Gilgamesh, about Chaucer. You can't read very much of Duncan without encountering Dante and Shakespeare and all of that. So it's to be contemporary is to have it all that's ever been, as well as what may be in our lifetimes.
Oh, big vote for, say, the pre-Socratics, for Heraclitus
Yeah.
and Parmenides as really important readings, and they're fine translators.
Well, I think we should ask if anybody out there wants to unmute yourself and either ask a question or put a question in chat, either one. And if and there's nothing so far, then so I also wonder if Hank, there's anything you'd like to ask Joseph and vice versa.
Well, let's give people a chance to, since I've been sitting and listening, if people want to chime in with a question or an observation, whatever, and then I'd be glad to, if we have a little more time, to pose a question back and forth for us.
Either put it into chat, or if you want to, raise your hand in one of these reaction things, I can recognize that. Or comments are okay as well as questions too. Benjamin.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I just wanted to thank both the poets so much, because this was just a wonderful way to spend part of the afternoon. And Joseph, I know it's been a while. I just wanted to thank you so much for reading Writing Death, because I mean, to say the least, it's a singular and compelling experience on the page, but when I have read it, I think of your voice, and I think it was just particularly meaningful to hear you read it, and that poem means a lot to me. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you. And it's great to hear your voice. So great.
Thank you. And I'm glad Heraclitus turned up, because it seemed like the last few minutes we were winding up to mention Heraclitus and Dogen and everybody. So it's again, it was great to hear both you and to see a lot of names of people here whose names I admire immensely from afar, even if they're people I don't know. So thanks again.
You. Soledad.
You have to unmute yourself, Soledad.
Yes, please unmute yourself.
Let's repeat that again. Um, it's good to see you, Joseph. It's good to see you, Donna, even though I can't see your picture. That's all good. Um, and you are both loved and missed, and it's been quite a year. So, my question, and this is the first time I've been hearing your work, Hank. It's amazing. I work in interdisciplinary arts as well. It's good to see a fellow traveler like doing the work. So, um, I guess my question is, and one that I've been struggling with a lot after writing a manuscript and a couple of chapbooks that I'm working on getting published, um, is all of this catastrophe that's happening on so many levels. What do you see at the other side of that? What's your vision for what could become? And I mean that specifically in what inspires you and moves you, even through the cracks, as it were. What's the grass that pushes through the cracks for you?
Hank, you want to go first?
Okay. Well, I don't know what's going to come after, or if there's an after. And at 75, I don't think I'll see it.
Mhm.
So, more, I guess, more present time question is how to live in this environment, how to live in this time of multiple catastrophe and insanity. And I guess historical perspective helps me some from a lot of the Buddhist reading that I do. Uh, this is not a unique human state that we're finding ourselves in where things are awful. And yet, I guess I'm fortunate living in a certain kind of isolation, though I live in a state with horrendous politics, but I
Mhm.
also have access to uh, woods and
Mhm.
dogs and birds
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
a farm environment that's an hour away. And it was something that came up in a sitting that I was doing with a Zen group this morning. We were reading John Terence, Pass Me the Rhinoceros. And there was a passage talking about finding those moments and possibilities of joy or peace
Mhm.
or happiness within the broader climate, not to deny the situations that we're in at all, but also to savor what is sustaining to us. And
Mhm.
some of what sustains me is just people I see on the screen right now that we have each other within Buddhist thinking.
Mhm.
There's three noble treasures: Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And Sangha's community,
Mhm.
and our this community with its differences as well, but this community sure matters. Sure matters. Our peculiar love of writing, of poetry, of the book. That's part of the sustenance. I don't know about your question about what's on the other side. I hope that I really hope
Mhm.
there is another side. Sometimes I think if three people got out of the way, Putin, Netanyahu, and Trump, that we would see a considerable difference, and that we
Mhm.
might get to another side of great complexity and ecological complexity. But change maybe isn't as far away as I tend to think. But thanks for the question. And look forward to Joseph's take too.
Well, I have a love-hate relationship with the word hope. Uh, it's
I-
there's well, there's no
It's true. And I'm sorry. Please go
appropriate
on.
response. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, there's a moment in her TED talk when Greta says, it's customary in talks like this to end on a note of hope. She says, I'm not going to do that. Um, and then she says, when there's action, there'll be plenty of hope. You know,
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
in terms of other sides. Yeah, I don't, I see it more and more as just an increasingly, like what Creeley called the snowball from hell, like just an increasingly uh, accreting, rolling,
Mhm.
nightmare.
Mhm.
But I do think that there are these points of engagement. There are these ways of
Mhm.
hearing,
Mhm.
seeing, or thinking, or sharing, or listening. I said hearing, but certainly
Mhm.
listening that become more alive and become more necessary, urgent. Um, I believe that I hear things now that I couldn't have heard, 10 years
Mhm.
ago, 40 years ago,
Mhm.
not that I was so very, very dumb, though I was, but it's just that what is David, Mark, what is Dave, are you still here? No, I guess he's not. What does David say? Something like you see clearly in a revolution. What is it, the line from
Clearly, in a revolution, look down and notice how you've
left?
slept.
Yeah, that's
From the
Mhm.
poem for
Mhm.
Jan Pollock.
yeah. No, it's from the poem for Frank O'Hara. Uh,
Right, but it's a quote. Oh, right, that's right. I'm thinking of the other one. Yes, that's
anyway,
that's ode. Yes.
Mark and I can
Mhm.
become very scholarly talking about David Shapiro, but I
We
do.
wrote that article. We wrote that essay on him.
Yes, yes. Quick plug. We did it. Mark and I collaborated on a really, I thought, really useful, uh,
Non-academic.
yeah, very
Mhm.
open conversation about David and his importance, and which got transcribed and then published in a book recently, a book called Renaissance. What is it? Poets, a Renaissance of Words.
Yeah.
So it's the
Mhm.
Published by Spite and Dival. Spite and Dival.
I think there's the sense that there are tougher kinds of seeing and feeling and hearing, and so that obviously that become possible in a revolution or in a cascading collapse, multiple
Mhm.
collapses. And that's kind of where I am. I'm not really thinking about
Mhm.
what's on the other side. I'm not really. I mean, there's the
Yeah.
midterms, and maybe there's an other side of the midterms. Let's hope.
Yeah, I don't necessarily mean that literally as much as both metaphorically and what you both addressed in relation to um what is emergent and possible and I guess I would describe it or was describing it, and I think still would describe it as more like a meta pessimism in the sense of just pessimism in general, and also the in the Frank Wilderson sense of something like everything being so overwhelming that you just kind of give up, and then something new emerges out of that. Like you had mentioned, Mark, like looking down and realizing how dumb we were. And I think that's true for everybody. And some of us are getting it quicker than others, but it's not like a linear process. And it's more like what Greta said. And my hope, if there is such a thing here, is that people like Mamdani in New York City will, if he can stay the course, um, he'll be an example along with several Congress people. And given my politics, I never thought that I would say not so much trust politicians as much as be willing to give them space. But given the climate, what can we do? Because yeah, it's rough when it's three, four billionaires and three politicians, and it's anything but three chords in the truth. So thank you both. Thank you both so
Do
much.
I
we
want
have
to
time
say,
for do we have time for me, Charles, to
yes,
quick.
ask a question or
Hi,
make a
hi
comment.
guys. Yeah. So I'm going to give a slightly international perspective here since I do live out
Hmm.
of the country. I live in southern Mexico, and I'm in
Hmm.
fact both a U.S. and Mexican citizen. It's not that bad.
Hmm.
The rest of the
Right.
world notices what's
Right.
going on. The hole in the
Right.
ozone is actually shrinking, right? That was just reported this past
Right.
week. Things are. So I want to go to Joseph and Hank on a question, and something that Joseph and I have talked a little bit about, but in the context of this reading, in the context of what you're talking about, Joseph, you and I have talked a lot about this, the soul making, right? And which comes out of Keats, obviously, right? This world is a veil of soul making. Where does that figure right now into this moment that we're talking about, right? How does that happen? And I do want to say, and Joseph, I'm much more optimistic than you because I like the president here. I like where the direction is going. In a lot of ways, there are good things. So
I'm glad that Claudia is a great president. I'm glad that you love Mexico and are happy there. It makes me happy to think of you there. Uh, you know, what I was talking about in terms of an intensified, more subtle awareness that yes, that's soul making. That, and I should have, you know, that is soul making, absolutely, and that's what I believe in. You know, the idea that we're not here just to suffer. We're here to make our souls and to help one another do that. Hank, you want to?
Well, or to have our souls made for us in a way through um, full attention, through a greater sense of presence, through a greater dwelling in the present, and that we are inscribed in that process. That the process of poetry writing too is an odd kind of soul making as well, in that I firmly believe that I don't understand what I'm writing, and I really especially don't understand it when I'm writing it, and that writing, and not just my own writing, but other writings that engage me are shaping and changing me in ways that are kind of hard to note or explain, but it's a gradual and slow process that takes place through this engagement with words on the page. But there's a slowness that, I guess what I'm saying, it's a wonderful thing to engage in a practice where, as with my shape writing or other things, where the practice itself exceeds intention, or it radically exceeds pre-thinking, so far away from the notion that many students seem to have, that a poet has a thought in mind that he or she must express. No, not at all. No, one goes with what's happening in the moment of the writing, and then gradually one can have a partial understanding of it that's also aided by relations to others. So I do think that the whole notion of soul making I find extremely attractive.
I want to say something to add and maybe bring this to a close then. And one is that many people here I know, or who have been here this evening, have children. And I know my two children are activists, one in global human rights issues and one in contemporary theatrical issues. And while I sometimes am terrified at the world they are inheriting, I am also often incredibly impressed by what they're coming up with. And I don't mean my only children, but that whole generation, which is roughly the generation of Greta too. And then I also wanted to say that after 50 plus years as a poet and 40 years as a bookmaker publisher, I still am in love with and am sustained by poetry, including the poets here today. So I just want to thank you for that. And that's part of what I take into the future as of such value. So thank you, everybody, for being here today.
So much.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you, Joseph, Hank, and everybody. Charles.
Thank you.
All right. Well, goodbye for now.
Bye,
As we
now.
like
Bye,
to
Charles.
say.
Bye, Joseph. Bye, Hank.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Charles. Thank you.